Yo, this is Paradox for OneSource.com, and today I'm going to be going over D-Strike, and I'm going to be doing a little something different than what I normally do. You know, I've gone over pistol round ideas, and I've done my articles, my written articles on maps. But today I'm going to go over Strike as a whole. I'm going to do a whole rundown, pretty comprehensive, go over pistol round ideas, go over the map as a whole, and also do maybe some T and CT strats and kind of give you a sort of design for how you want to make your strats and give you some ideas too. The reason I'm going to do that is there isn't really a lot of content on Strike, both on OneSource and looking at different websites. I didn't see a lot of demos up, so I thought I'd give you guys the whole thing on Strike, and it being the Cal map of the week and us having a lot of requests. That's what I'm gonna do for you guys today. So, getting right into it. Strike as a whole, to give you some just general things. This map is unique in the way that the bomb sites, rather bomb site A, is going to be played pretty heavy on the CT side. You see um, most teams play 3 people at the site, and then also play 1 player in the middle, and that's what I'd say is my recommended setup. Maybe having an AWPer on the gun round, even on pistol rounds, having an AWPer trying to play this window room. Okay, and you know you can kind of variate how you do that. You could also play this Opera connector. What I'd recommend them playing window though, because this is gonna not only have them cover middle, and you could have sort of different angles you can play. But you have a pretty quick rotation to the B bomb site over here, right here through this window, and this is a pretty good point to cover from. You could get people coming up from the basement, which is most of where the B hits are going to come from, and then you also have a very quick rotation to A. So this middle player with the AWP is going to be really crucial in helping both site defenses out, also covering up what I call this catwalk here, catwalk to B. So this mid guy is going to be pretty key. Like I said, you're playing a really strong A setup, and that's kind of unique on this map. The only other map I could really think of, I mean, you have Train. Train's a little bit different though, and Inferno comes to mind too. Inferno, you normally will play only 1 player at B, and or 2 players at B at the start, and then maybe rotate into a 4-1 setup on Inferno. And that's kind of what you're doing on Strike, is you're going to have usually 3 people at the site at A, play it really strong, try to hold it, and your rotator too, which is going to be right here, to help. And then you're going to have the 1-player B usually. Okay. Now this doesn't mean you have to play the setup. I mean, you could play sort of a 2-1-2 setup. Maybe 2 players in B. 1 closer in middle and 2A, but this is going to be a lot more difficult. It's going to make the A side a lot more difficult to hold. If you could pull it off, I'd recommend it, and I'm going to tell you why. The other big reason, or the other big unique point about this map is that the B bomb site is really difficult to hold, and I'll explain why. This basement here, okay, what I call the basement anyway, is really difficult to hold, especially on pistol round now with max rounds 15. This is gonna give you a great, really simple T strategy on pistol round. I'll explain, but it's really difficult to hold this basement. There's really no great place to hold it from, and really most players what they'll end up doing is kind of spotting like this. Okay, spotting right over the ledge, and I think that's really the best thing that you could do in this bomb site if you're playing it solo, is spot it. And then you also have to kind of, if middle gets exposed or your middle player rotates to A, most of the time you won't have to worry too much about this catwalk or this upper B, whatever you want to call it. But nonetheless, I mean, if a team's intelligent, and I'm going to play this into your strategy, if a team knows how to exploit that middle and get up the catwalk to B, this player is going to be pretty isolated over here in B, and he's going to have a hard time. And nonetheless, even when he's only covering down low here, he's going to have a hard time regardless. There's really no great place to push up. I mean, I'd I'd recommend maybe if you're playing this site on your own, maybe push up once in a while, you know, maybe try to get an entry frag and fall back. It's really going to be effective. Then again, you really risk the getting picked too, and that's going to be a big sort of problem for you, because then you have to rotate the middle guy off and whatnot. So you know, once in a great while you may want to push. I wouldn't really push too far, really not farther than here. This is where you start losing battles right here. You know, you have the stairs, people can post up on you. So, you know, maybe push up over here and check for anybody rushing, or maybe catch somebody not really expecting that push and then fall back. But most of the time, you know, this is going to be your sort of trick play, your gimmick. This is going to be just trying to catch somebody off guard, you know, 1 or 2 rounds out of 15 really that you're going to do this. So now we have to deal with the rest. And like I said, you have this that you could play, that little angle. That's really the only spot you're going to have a clear advantage at. Really no other place you could play. Now, I wouldn't really recommend playing back here because, like I showed earlier, that middle player is going to be rotating. The really other couple of viable places you could play is back here, what I call the storage area back here. And you can play, you know, I'd recommend playing it with an op. This isn't too great of an angle to fight at, but you could play back here. The thing is, I don't really like playing a spot like that if you're playing solo. If I'm playing solo, I want to be able to spot. So most of the time, you're going to end up spotting anyway. And it may be kind of difficult to fall back and stay alive. So really what you want to do is just try to spot and get your rotation in. You could also rotate over to this fence area. That's probably going to be the best thing you can do, is maybe spot and then do something like that, like a flash over to that middle, and then come over to this fence area and then try to stay alive as long as you possibly can. Maybe even smoke yourself out would be a pretty good thing to do, because even falling back to that fence area, I mean, if you got people coming up the stairs, they have the advantage. You're going to see your whole body. They're going to be able to see you out in the open, and they're only going to kind of peek their heads out. Plus, you're going to have multiple guys coming out. It's going to be a pretty hard fight for you, nonetheless. So that's really what I recommend doing if you do play the 4-1 setup. The main idea with that setup too is that most teams are going to hit A most of the time, because middle is not really very accessible. Okay, and most teams try to avoid it. It's pretty hard to fight the opper in the connector and the window, and then, you know, you also have to worry about your catwalk push too. You know, there's a lot of places this guy can be. And also it's kind of a long and wide open area, meaning that the opper doesn't even have to be peeking. I mean, he can peek out at random times and catch somebody, you know, trying to creep up over here, or trying to creep up catwalk, trying to creep up to connector. So no matter what you do in this middle, it's going to be a little difficult for you to, you know, most teams are going to try to avoid it for those reasons. So I mean, that's the general idea of why people play, why most teams anyway play kind of that 3-1-1, that 4-1 setup, stronger to A. It's because this catwalk's closed. Now, I mean, that brings up a couple points. On T side, that's going to be your main emphasis, and when I get into that T side and strats, you'll see that. You know, I'll give you a couple of tricks working with the middle over here and working towards that B bomb site because it's so weak. But yeah, that'll be your main CT setup. Like I said, 3 people in this bomb site. I'd recommend having an opper CT spawn as default. It's going to be, this is a pretty hard angle for any other opper, any T-side opper to pick, because you have many angles you could play at. You can play over here, you could play closer by the boxes. Now there's, you know, a lot of angles you could play with this op, so it's going to be pretty hard for that opper T-side to pick you, really no matter what he does. So having a CT side opper here, you know, you could cover upper, you could cover lower, people coming over to here and getting into the site, so you could prevent a plant pretty well. So you have your opper, I'd recommend playing over there. Then you have your rotator who's going to come over to this side. And I'd recommend having a player come from CT spawn, and this is A site. Okay, you really want to pre-flash every round, really, because a lot of teams, what they'll do when they hit this, and this is another kind of unique aspect about this map, is that they'll toss flashes over this wall, and this allows you to rush really quickly. I mean, you could get right off the spawn, and you could also use smokes on this map. You know, you can come up with a lot of different smokes, and pretty much every wall in this map, the wall in the middle here, you can toss smokes over the middle wall. You know, pretty much every wall over here is going to be, you know, you could toss smokes over it, and you can come up with a lot of different tricks and whatnot. And like I said, that also allows for those early flashes to come in for a bomb site. So really what you want to do is stop that A rush. I mean, be safe. And this player in the site usually isn't going to be using his nades too much, so you could do something like that and maybe get to under ladder area initially, and then maybe you can move around. This fire, what I call firebox right here, can be pretty decent spot to play. But the overall idea is to be mobile and work with your opper. Okay, you're gonna have that opper back there, usually spotting lower, and then you're gonna have your third player sort of spotting upper, and this is sort of the spot I recommend right here for spotting. And really, all you want to do is strafe in and out. If you have a rifle, if you have an op, that's okay too. I recommend having a rifle though, because you have your op rotator. You already have an op in CT spawn. More than 2 ops really becomes a little clustered on this map, and you'll have a hard time retaking the B bomb site. So having a rifle over here is pretty good. You're really mobile. You could help out connector. You could help out middle. This is sort of the support person over here. You know, they help whatever's needed. So you have your opper that's pretty mobile too, and you have your player over here that's usually going to be covering lower and anybody dropping in the site. And then you have this player right here who's going to play around this area and going to support any sort of site take. Now the thing is, for the most part, you don't really want to fight people on this ramp. You know, if you have an opper and that rifle peeks out, a lot of people will try to post up and catch people running across like that. So you really want to be careful about that. Don't get too careless with your rifles here. Play your rifles back, play them safe, and force the other team to take a site. Now, if they're using a lot of smokes and all that, really what you're going to have to do is time a push, okay? And I also went over this kind of thing on Train, where you'd play back and then push up into the front yard once they took it. This is the same kind of idea that we're going to apply here, and that's, you know, your player over here under this ladder area, wherever he's playing, doesn't have too many flash angles, so he probably wants to just stay out and fight. But this player over here who's playing by the connector has a lot of flash angles, so you could come over. Even the opper that's rotating can help in sort of a repush, and you could do flashes over the box onto that ramp. You could do one up top, you know, just for the sake of you know, covering that up. And then you could do sort of like a repush once the other team gets out to this box over here, and also, you know, you have this opera on the ramp. So yeah, once they smoke up the bomb site, you could sort of confuse them by doing that repush, and that's probably going to be your safest bet, because a lot of teams, if they're smoking the site out, you know, they probably have a really strategized site take, and you know, they have one guy looking here, one guy looking there, and they have everything sort of static. And that's a great way to throw teams off, is to do that counter aggress when they're trying to execute the strategy. You could do it as a single player, you could also do it as a team, okay? And you know, as a team is always more powerful, so I recommend having that sort of thing set up. Just have a retake, you know, call simple timing, say, all right, we're going to retake, and then, you know, have one or two players with the flashes, say maybe CT spawn player, or the opper over here, or even the rifler over here, whatever you want to do, and do just kind of a repush. Alright. The other thing on this A-bomb site, you want to be careful to this angle right here. you know, don't be careless running around this bomb site, because you never know when that opera is going to be posted up there. Most of the time, you're not really going to be playing too aggressive on this, on the apartment on the upper A. So you know, you really want to be careful about somebody being posted over here and waiting for a peek, waiting for entry pick. All right, so you have your sort of CT setup over here in A. You have your B for the most part. The only other variable I want to go over, the variance I want to go over, is going to be your 2-1-2 setup, and I recommend just having it for the sake of it. In the case that the other team really prefers to play B, most teams prefer to go A, even though you stack it. But in the case that the other team has a solid B hit, they know how to take control of middle. They push that window guy off, the middle guy off. What I'd recommend, setup I'd recommend, is having an opper back here, and this, you know, opper back here, and then the rifler playing sort of how he normally does, helping cover up that basement. And this is really going to be hard to beat, no matter what the other team does, no matter what kind of sight take they have. It's going to be hard to beat. This opper back here has every advantage in the world. If you have opper back here, along with that rifle, the other team's not going to be able to go catwalk. They're not really going to be able to attack catwalk. Most of the time what you're going to see is people, you know, once they get past this middle, they don't even expect anybody really to be looking at them, because most teams do, in fact, play that one guy by the basement, and that's it, and they don't really expect the guy to be back here. And say they send, you know, 2 or 3 guys up here, and all of a sudden there's opera here, you know, first guy goes down, and then the other 2 are coming in, and they're kind of unsure what to do. Even if they have an op right here, this is just an almost impossible angle to fight an op at. And I mean, you have your angle over here with the fence, where you're also peeking over the box, so they can only really see your head, and you could swing out to this angle over here on the left. You know, stay back here and play on the left. There's really no way for that opper to peek you. There's absolutely no way he should be able to win that fight. You could also be over the box here, and you could even play this with a rifle, staying really mobile and you know, moving around a lot, taking a few shots in and out. I'd recommend it with an op. An op just can't be beat, but if you can't afford an op, or you know, you have 2 rifles, play the sight, it's still a very viable option. So I mean, that's going to be really the best thing you can do. And then I'd say the second guy would play his sort of default spot. Really be wary about your catwalk. You could play in a way, see, you sort of close that angle off with a wall, and you could still spot anybody going basement. Maybe you get a pre-nade off or something like that, and then you want to be able to multitask too. Once you get that nade off, I mean, you want to, if you want to move, you could always pre-flash catwalk, even though your teammate's covering it, or you could even move maybe sort of over here, and then peek in and out. You know, so play however you really want to. You could also maybe fall back on the side. I'd recommend trying to fight him on these stairs. Okay, trying to fight him down on this basement, in this basement. Even if you got 1 or 2, or if you delay, you could help your opera out back here. You know, he's playing over here, and he could catch people running up. So even, you know, they may not even expect him to be here. Once they're coming up, if they kill this guy on the site, you know, they may try to run up. And a great thing to do as well is try to make these guys chase this guy over here, because then the opera can move over and catch people running up, trying to catch this guy running over here, or running over into the site. And that's going to be a good thing too. You're going to get a lot of easy kills that way, and then these guys are going to have to fight too, and that they're going to slow down a little bit, be unsure. So yeah, that's going to be, if you do play your B setup, that's the foolproof way to really play it. Okay, if you do play 2 dedicated players B, in that case I would have the 3 players A, and then of course you have to, in some way, you have to spot middle and sort of keep an eye on that. So maybe have a rifle. You know, keep an eye on it. Also, what you can do, you don't really have to fight that connector too much. You could have your opper from CT spawn swing over and help out too. This is going to be, you know, this may be a little difficult angle to fight at, because you have your upper, your lower, and your lower part, you can only really see their heads, so it may be a little difficult. But if you do end up playing that 2B, setup, you're gonna have to compromise a little bit. So that connector is gonna be gonna be your weakest point because you don't have that middle opera anymore. So that's really gonna be what you're gonna want to cover up, and you could play your connector player a little more focused on that, or your third A player rather, a little more focused on that, and then you could have your spawn opper help out as well. So it's all a matter of being vocal, really communicating where they're coming from, and knowing where to look and when to look there. Okay, so being able to multitask is a big thing on the CT side. Pretty much every player is responsible for two spots, maybe more one spot than the other, but you got to be able to know when, alright, I got to stop looking at my spot, I got to look here, and I got to help out my teammate. Okay, so that's going to be kind of the theme on the CT side of Strike. Okay, so knowing where to look, knowing where to be, when to be there. Okay, so you have two setups on your CT. That's really, you know, nothing really fancy comes into play here. The only thing that I could think of is maybe an early push over to lower A ramp. You may also consider, depending on how the team plays it, a push over to this upper apartment. Now what I'd recommend here is pushing a rifle or two. What most teams will do, and some teams may go apartment heavy. If they do, I don't recommend pushing it, but some teams only send one guy up here to just hold control, distract, and whatnot, and be a big pain, and that kind of draws your attention off the lower, and you know, it's effective. So if they send one or two guys up here, what you may do is send your rifle up here. Since you sort of have an extra person in the site anyway, you can send your rifle up here, and most people will come over to this side, and you could peek and catch them off guard. No real nade work going on here. All you want to do is get up here as fast as possible and get up to this room. If you could get up to this room, you'll be at the advantage. Or try to, you know, anticipate and try to fight the person coming out. So like I said, if they play a weak upper, they send like a weak force apartment for control purpose, even say an opper up there, then you may consider pushing it. You know, you know, one guy should be enough. Two tends to get a little cluttered. If you want to try two, that's fine as well. It's really the only time you're going to do upper pushes if you just want to gain that control from that one or two players up there. The better thing to do, I'd say, is a lower A push. Okay, and you could do this sort of delayed. You don't really want to rush into the rush. That's not the point here. What you want to do is set up, and then maybe give them, you know, 5 or 10 seconds. So you sort of want to feel out at what speed the other team likes to take the site. So this is more of a sort of mid-match thing you could do. Once you know, hey, the team likes to go really fast. You know, they like to either rush or if we delay them, they like to come 5 or 10 seconds after. You could sort of time your push that way. You know, you could stop the rush and then say, all right, in 3 or 5 seconds we're gonna go. Okay. Rather, if the other team likes to take their time, post up, you may want to delay that push a little bit more. Okay, you sort of want to catch them on the brink of them moving up and kind of getting out of position. You don't really want to run into players posted up back here. It's gonna be a bit of trouble if you do that. So if you do push this, I recommend just sending all 3 of your rifles in the site down here. You know, maybe an opper if you have that opper. If you have a second op rather, you can send 2 rifles and an op and just push and continuously flash this ramp. Okay, and you could even do one down there. Once you do one more, you could push and sort of clear that area out. Alright, and if there's nobody there, usually that means that the other team's not going to go A, or they're going to delay it a very long time. Okay, so that's a little trick you could, you know, little aggressive variation you could throw in. At the B bomb site, I wouldn't really recommend pushing this catwalk too much. You know, the opper, if you're getting beat a lot at window, beat a lot connector, you may move over here. You could also, if you get over to the left side, a little riskier, but you could get up through this vent and get over the catwalk. But you could even go catwalk in the beginning and sort of play like this angle right, kind of right here. A lot of people like to cross to this box. You know, you could even play a little more passive angle, or you could peek out and try to catch somebody off guard. Most people don't really look for that catwalk push too often, so it's going to be one of your things you could throw in if you're having trouble at window, or if you just want to mix it up a little bit. This is a pretty good thing to do. Alright, just push that catwalk. Most of the time though, what you're going to do if you're doing a B push is that you're going to go through this basement, and I'd send two players here, send 2 riflers, I'd say. You know, if you have an op, if you have to send an op, that's fine. But send 2 riflers through here and try to clear this area out. Okay, pretty much try to clear maybe 1 or 2 players, maybe try to catch them executing B. The fact of the matter is, if you could get the bomb down over here, if you could kill the bomber in this area and take control of the bomb, you're pretty much going to be guaranteed the round, because this is going to be a really difficult place for the other team to try to regain control of that bomb. So you could throw this in once in a while too, if a team's you know, kind of spreading the map a lot. This is something you want to throw in. Just keep them on their toes, really. You know, you really want to just keep them guessing. So that's another thing you could throw in. Alright, don't get too crazy with the pushes, but you do want to throw some variation in, because this map, especially over here at B, your setups get really stale. You're pretty much playing the same way every time, even at A. So you definitely want to have that option to aggress. Alright, so that's a pretty comprehensive rundown of CT side. So I want to go over T side a little bit, go over pistol rounds too. On pistol round, on T side, there's one of 2 things you could really do. One of them is to take advantage of the fact that most teams are going to play a weak B, and you could go through this basement, you know, maybe creep up and do explode strat would be a great thing to do. The main thing is, if you do go to this basement on pistol, you really want to avoid the fight over here at these stairs. You want to use your movement, you want to be really mobile, and try to get this guy over here at the stairs. What most players will do is that they'll be over here, you know, maybe even with a nade out, or maybe trying to get a shot off, and then they'll try to fall back. So you really want to chase this guy down and run him down and take control of the site. Once you get contact, you gotta go. You're dedicated, and that's the best thing you could do. You don't really want to fall back and get too fancy. You want to run in and take control of the site, okay, by force. Okay, so 4 or 5 players down the basement. You know, simple strat, but great strat. Okay, you can Glock armor up and really catch them off guard at that B side. That's a good piss around strat. Another thing you could do, I wouldn't really recommend going on an A rush, because most teams may even some teams may even try to look for that A rush and pre-nade or something like that. So I wouldn't really recommend that. What you do want to do, if you're going to do a slower strat, you know, if you're not going to do a simple B take, I'd recommend having at least 1 smoke, and wherever you really want to smoke, you can smoke off middle and go connector, and kind of storm connector that way. Another good thing to do is maybe to go through the tunnel, and this is going to be also a good gun round idea too for sending 1 or 2 guys tunnel. But you could go tunnel, you know, send a few of your guys tunnel, and then sort of clear this connector out, and you could get this guy off the mid window. And once you take control of mid, you have a lot more options, and this team's sort of gonna panic, because at this point the catwalk's open, the connector's open, and if you have a well-placed smoke, so you know you smoke catwalk or you smoke connector, you know, you could either run through the smoke over to the site, you know, say you do smoke the connector and you take control of the middle. You could do a great split on the A site where you just come in and maybe flash CT spawn, and then have a lower ramp guy or say an upper guy, you know, have maybe 3 guys come in connector and 2 guys either upper or lower, and then you can come in and storm the site that way, and you know, maybe have your lower person do a timed flash, and then 3 people storm this connector. I'd say swing to the right most of the time and just try to catch that guy, you know, or at least look to the right for a little bit, and then try to storm this site, okay? And if you do let this guy live over here in middle, then you sort of have to be wary of your back. Okay, and you could pinch this site really well though with this connector split. Okay, so that's going to be another good thing you could do. Again, using a smoke on pistol, if you do invest in a smoke, you're not doing that really simple rush type of strat. Smoke's going to be the best thing you can do, because on pistol, there's really no good response to smoke. You know, on gun rounds, you know, somebody can creep through it, or they can op through one smoke. They may be able to see through it. On pistol round, you don't really want to creep up into smoke, because that's going to give away your advantage with the USP. You're going to be fighting a lot of people close up with the USP, and that's really not what you want. You know, people can jump around corners, and you're going to get overwhelmed really easily. So there's really no good response to smoke on pistol rounds. So you definitely want to use that, and you could do many things with it. I mean, you could do that connector split. You could even pour out of upper. That'd be another good thing to do if you get a smoke out, say over here at the upper, and you send most of your force out the upper over here. Have maybe a flash over from lower A, a flash or two, maybe one over the wall, and one sort of over to this area over here, and then you have your smoke up, and you just pour, say, 3 or 4 guys out of the upper. That's going to be really overwhelming for any CT team to cover. So you have a lot of options here. I'd stick towards the B strat most of the time. It's a foolproof strat, you know, that strat I went over in B. And your next best thing is going to be middle, for the sake of catching teams off guard. You know, connector is not really a spot that most teams expect you to go to. Even if they do, they don't really expect a big force to come out of there. They don't expect a site take from middle, and that's going to be your second best bet. Is going to be that connector A split on T-pistol. Okay, so you have your B strat, you have your connector split, and you also have your upper take as well. So whatever you want to use, whatever works best for you, that's of course what you wanna play with. So I'll leave that up to you guys. A lot of options for you though. So aside that, to cover that up on CT pistol, you're usually going to play pretty default setup. The main thing being that you want to keep your range with your USPs and really hit your shots. I wouldn't recommend playing too many players pushed up. Okay, so maybe play pretty much like a typical gun round setup, except maybe this other USP may want to play somewhere in the site instead of playing under ladder over here. So maybe even playing 2 people CT spawn would be fine. And then pretty much you're going to set up sort of on a typical pistol setup. And either way, you're going to be sort of at a disadvantage on the pistol round, especially if they go B. And I'd recommend rotating the middle player off pretty early, and say, you know, just say, all right, they didn't come middle early, you know, they're probably not going to come, and say, you know, rotate your middle guy pretty quickly. This rotation is going to be pretty fast, especially if you're you know, you could even wait for your guy to spot, and the second he has any reason to think anybody's there, you may want to rotate this guy over to window. If you give up the B bomb site, it's going to be really difficult, you know, for you to retake. If they do take it, would I recommend just having a really as fast as possible rotation to connector, because this is where you're gonna have your range. Okay, this is where you're gonna have your advantage. So you're gonna be able to come up in a force. Main thing when you're retaking the site, try to stay in a pack. Don't really send too many guys too many directions. Okay, for lack of better words. I mean, maybe send one guy over here in this building if he's still alive, and then say maybe 2 or 3 catwalk. Or you may even consider flanking down here if you have the time. Most of the time we're going to be retaken from catwalk though, so you want to send most of your force that way on a CT retake. Okay, so kind of the same concept as on gun round. On pistol, you want to hold A site strong. If they do go B, you know, be prepared to rotate fast, middle guy, and then you want to be prepared to retake as well, because it's going to be a hard site to hold if the other team takes it correctly. So pistol round is going to be a difficult difficult round for CTs, but you can make it work with the quick rotations and the organized retake. If you can get an entry kill or two, really hinder these guys' ability to cover the bomb site up, you're gonna be in decent shape. So that's really what I recommend on CT pistol. There's really not much more you can do than that. So that'll finish off completely the CT side. Now going into the T side a little bit, as far as strats go, your main thing is going to be to try to take control in middle in any way you really can. Okay, and what you can do, I mean, really simply, you know, there's fancy smokes you could toss out of spawn and whatnot. Really simply, what you can do is just try to smoke this off. You know, maybe even use 2 smokes. Maybe use the smoke a little deeper too. And then pretty much use your movement. And once you get over to this side, this middle player is going to have a heck of a time trying to cover. All right, because you could strafe in and out, especially if you have an opera here. He's going to be at the advantage trying to fight a guy in window. If the guy's in window, he gets smoked out, and then the opera gets over to this side, he's not really going to be able to peek too much. Okay, he's going to have a hard time fighting here because he's going to have to guess, and then if he does peek out, he's going to be fighting a guy at head level, and that guy could see his whole body, so he's at a disadvantage. Also, what you can do, apply extra pressure to middle. So go through this underpass, and you really want to creep up along the side of the wall. Don't let anybody really spot you out going there. You know, some people may play like this. I like doing this myself. You know, seeing if anybody's coming basement. So or down in this tunnel rather. So stand along this wall. You know, be careful for your connector, for anybody trying to cover. And then you could even catch this guy off guard. I mean, you could do something like double nades or something like that. You know, however you want to clear that guy out, or you could sneak under and kind of swing out this way and catch a lot of people not expecting that too. So you really want to give this middle guy, as much trouble as you could possibly give him. I mean, but utilize all your tools to do this. So you have your basement, and this is really powerful right here. Just kind of swinging out and picking that way. This guy's not gonna expect that. He's gonna be caught off guard. So if he's still there, you're usually gonna get a pretty easy kill. You could also boost up into this window. So you know, you need 2 players to do that, but you can boost up, and even if you do kill this middle guy, you could even wreak havoc that way. I mean, you could boost the guy window, have him flank over around connector too. So that could be, or even flank the B site. That'd be really difficult to stop. So, you know, be tricky. Try to work that middle. I really don't see a lot of teams doing that. So try to use that window as much as you possibly can. But yeah, definitely take control of the middle on most strats, and this will give you a lot more options than you're used to. Most of the time, all you really have is your A, and then your simple B hit from the basement. But if you could utilize middle, even maybe get the pick on that opper, for sure. Really, what you want to do once you get that opper down, depending on how the other team plays, which is usually a 3A setup, you really just want to take the B side as fast as possible. At any point that you get that mid pick, you want to put a lot of pressure over to connector. You know, smokes and whatnot. If you have 1 or 2 players middle, smoke off the catwalk, prevent that opper from picking anybody off, and just kind of get over here and get into this catwalk. Okay? And sometimes you may even catch somebody spotting like this if you get up catwalk and you just shoot this guy on the side of the head because he's not even expecting anybody coming catwalk. So really, the main thing for your T side is going to be do things that most teams don't do, because since teams really don't do it, they don't really expect it on their CT. Most teams carry over their philosophy into both halves, and they sort of play the same. You won't see a team that plays a strong A, you know, puts a ton of emphasis on A and stopping A rushes. You won't see that team really do a lot of A rushes because they think, hey, you know, that's really the thing that's difficult to do on this map. That's what we stop. So we're not going to try it on our T side. It'd be a stupid thing to do. And a lot of teams have that sort of one track, sort of that one track mind, if you want to call it that. They have that sort of that idea set up that way, and they play that way too tactically. You know, they apply their CT and T ideas in tandem. So kind of how I explain that. So really, what you want to do, like I said, is do things that teams don't expect. I mean, taking this catwalk, a lot of teams don't expect that. They play 3A, they play one guy here, they play one guy middle. If you get that middle pick, or if you disable that guy middle and give him a lot of trouble, you know, that middle guy doesn't expect a lot of people to be focusing on him. He's expecting a side take to B or to A. So, you know, you have the opportunity to gain an advantage on this middle guy. You definitely want to utilize that and push him off, and then open all your options for all the other things that the other team doesn't expect. You know, they expect that mid guy to be fine and dandy, sitting in the window with his op, having a great time. You know, having a little bit of target practice, where, you know, you're gonna come and rain on his parade and give him hell, and then open everything up for yourselves too in the process. So, you know, definitely taking this catwalk is gonna be a great thing to do. So you definitely want to have a strat or two that revolves around getting this mid guy off, even getting the pick on that mid guy. That'd be even better, and then doing a B split. A lot of teams don't do a B split, so I'm not gonna go into specific spots and smokes with you guys. You know, that take too much time, but just have a B split. You know, maybe a 3-2 split, 3 guys middle to catwalk, 2 guys basement would be a simple outline for you guys, and work from there. So have a B split. That's definitely one thing you want to have, and then have a site take. Okay, and there's 2 different things you want for A. One of them is a rush. Okay, and what I'd recommend is using the idea that you could flash over walls and all that, and go over early. Okay, and have 1, 2, maybe 3 guys. You know, say 3 people, just one. Second person comes around the corner, delays a little bit, bam, second one, and try to, pretty much the idea is going to be to try to keep everybody in the site blind. Okay, even better if you can get a couple smokes off over towards CT spawn. You know, maybe figure out a couple smokes over that wall and smoke off that CT spawn area. And I'm gonna make it simple on myself and do that. But you know, you could have a couple smokes over that spawn and smoke off that spawn. That's gonna really end their A site defense. That A opper's spawn opper's disabled. You're flashing the whole site. You know, once you come up this ramp, first person is gonna do that flash like that, and blind that whole area over there, and you pour out, and pretty much what you've done is isolated the site guy that we were talking about, or the guy under balcony where he's usually going to be playing. You've isolated that guy, and that's really what you want to do. And if you have to wait for those smokes to get up or whatever, you know, you do those smokes, you do all the flashes. What I'd recommend, if that spawn upper is not isolated yet, then, and even if you don't have smokes up there, then maybe get over to this box and do smokes from here if you have to. You know, that's the second best thing you could do. But in either case, you really want to isolate that spawn guy. You don't want the spawn operator. He's going to have a lot of angles. You know, you running into the site, you trying to clear this guy, he's going to have so many open shots on you. So you really want to get rid of that guy, or you're going to have a lot of trouble. Okay, and the same thing sort of with a green area. You want to isolate that area too. You could do it with smokes too. You could also do it with flashes if you have. I mean, if you're rich, you know, you have all your nades or smokes or flashes that are going to be really crucial. You're not really gonna hit a site without them. All right, you're not gonna be able to do an A hit without proper smokes and flashes. So, so that's gonna be that. I mean, you can do that. That rush and maybe send 1 or maybe 2 players upper. I'd recommend sending 1 player upper, putting a lot of pressure, trying to stay alive, looking out for any sort of push, maybe smoking out over here, and you gain a lot of angles to flash from, nade from. You could clear this balcony off with a simple nade. Okay, You don't even have to expose yourself to it. You can just nade off the ledge, and you can hear if that nade hits anybody. And then you can support with flashes too. You can, you know, it's going to be your main role. And once the site's being hit, the most that this upper player is going to do if you send a player upper is he's going to usually check, you know, just different spots through that smoke. Maybe even swing out and try to clear that balcony out, but I wouldn't really recommend that. Once you get past this area, once that smoke's gone, you're gone too. Okay, you're not really gonna be able to do much more than that. Maybe be a little bit of a pest and try to peek in and out really quick once in a while and make your presence known. But other than that, you're gonna try to stay alive here, and your main goal, your main thing is gonna be for a site retake up here. That's really what the control point. Upper's more of a control point than a place to really hit the site from. So that's really how you want to treat upper. You could even send a player middle and play with that middle player and keep him from rotating over to this area. That's going to be pretty good too, to keep this guy occupied. So you may want to send the middle player there, and then send 3 guys over here with a solid site take over to lower ramp, and then you could do a lot of damage that way. So really simple kind of idea. You know, use those flashes over. And close over here too, you know, try to take that site. You could also do a slower site take, you know, a lot more coordinated smokes. You wait for those smokes to get up over to CT spawn. You could smoke off this connector area. That's what I'd recommend, just having smokes here. Always double them up. You don't want people playing in them. Just double up those smokes and take the site. I mean, from there, at that point, you could do any sort of real site, any sort of split that you want to do if you smoke those areas out. So you could do a slower strat with that. Even a fake to B would be great. I mean, you could send 1 guy over to B, or say 2 guys over to B, run maybe, you know, use that round time, use that 145 round time that we have now, and, you know, send 2 guys over to fake B a little bit, and then maybe go to tunnel, or maybe go tunnel in the beginning, work that middle guy off, and sort of do a B fake sort of type thing, and work this middle guy off too, and give him a lot of trouble. Maybe get that mid pick and split connector as well. So if you don't do the rush, or if you don't do like a early round strat to A, your best bet, I mean, like I said, you can do a site take with smokes, but also you can utilize that idea about working middle and maybe even faking B, because most teams are going to be really wary about that B site. Once anybody's spotted over here in B, the other team's usually going to rotate a guy over because they're too afraid to hold it with 1 player. So that'll open up a lot of doors over in A, sending B fakes. And really quickly, what I want to cover, kind of the last thing I'm going to cover, is a whole idea of fakes on this map. On some maps, what you do, you fake to pull people out of bomb sites, and that's your whole goal of a fake, is to pull people out of bomb sites. On some maps, rather, including Strike, this is going to be one of these maps, you're going to fake to try to keep people in sites, and you're going to utilize actually both ideas. If you ever fake A, you're really faking A to keep all 3 players at this bomb site, okay, or for them to try to play a strong A setup. Rather, if you fake B, you're going to try to pull the middle guy off his spot, and you're going to try to make him rotate over to the B site. Now, you know, use your head. All right, little exercise. I mean, use your head and figure, all right, we're faking B and we're pulling this middle guy off. So what's the best way to take middle? This may be a good way to take mid. You could fake B, you could pull that mid guy off of B, or that mid guy off of mid rather, and pull him over to B, and then you could delay take middle. And this is going to be the last thing I want to go over, is going to be delaying in the mid. Some players may even rotate off voluntarily and say, hey, there's nothing mid, nothing came mid, you know, there's a minute left in the round now, minute 10, 35 seconds went by, there's nothing middle. So you can delay take mid, and you can just kind of hang out, you know, wait at the bottom of ramp, maybe even send players over to A to help, you know, maybe get set up or do a little fake depending on your strat. And then you could just wait over here in this ramp and just take middle with about 110, 1 minute left. and maybe you sold a B fake, like I said, and now you have middle control, and you didn't even have to fight or you didn't have to smoke. And the better thing too, you gain an advantage out of this too, because most teams aren't going to expect you to be taking control middle that late in the round. They're going to get careless. You know, one guy may try to come over and peek connector. You know, just kind of half-ass it. Sorry for the language, but you know, just kind of come over and see if anything's mid, and all of a sudden, hey, you got two people mid, you got Opera posted, and hey, you know, this guy becomes really vulnerable. So definitely use that delay middle tactic too. You know, you definitely want to work that middle guy off, give him a lot to think about, and give him trouble. That's another way to do that, is to delay middle. Just sit back and wait, and then, you know, start taking control later in the round. You have a lot of round time, why not? I mean, you're going to be able to execute a site take either way, and now you gain a big advantage, maybe a pick resulting off of it. So, you know, you can kind of delay it's pretty much like delaying your whole strat, you know, say 35 seconds or so, given time for a little fake and a little map control. This map's unique in the fact that you could do that. You could really play with people's heads just based on the timer where you're going to be at a certain time. So, you know, that's going to be the sort of last idea I want to go through. So we've covered a lot. You know, maybe even about an hour of material for you guys today, so that's a lot. So I don't want to overdo it, so that'll be that. So yeah, to recap, because I've said a lot, CT side, you have your default sort of 3-1-1, 3A, 1 middle, 1B setup. You also have you definitely want to have your 2-1-2 setup as well, your 2A, 1 middle closer to A, and your 2 B players. Okay, so you want to experiment with that once in a while, and sparingly use your CT pushes. Okay, those are going to be your main points on CT. Pistol round, you're going to play mostly like a gun round and try to and have a retake set up for B. Okay, have a B retake, because you're probably going to lose that site if they do take a pistol round. On T side, you have your pistol round strats. You have your B take, you know, going on the opposite spectrum. You have your B take, which is going to be a great simple strat. You're going to have your connector split, your middle split, and then T side gun rounds. What you're going to want to do is take control of middle and use a lot of different ideas for controlling middle. You know, your late round middle control I just went over. You have your going middle tunnel over to the window and taking control that way. You have your smokes mid and getting your opera out in position. So you have a lot of options to take control of mid. You definitely want to utilize all of them. Okay, or, you know, once you find one that really works, you want to stick towards that, but still have your mind open to the different types of mid control you can use. Okay, and then you have your strategies. You have your A strat, you have your A rush rather, and then your A strategy. And your A strategy can you know, you could do a lot of different splits on the rush, though you're going to send most of your force lower. Okay, key points to keep in mind. And then on any sort of B split, the key to B site takes is going to be to take control middle and work catwalk. Okay, work catwalk and work B splits rather than B takes, because most teams, like I explained, work heavy over to the basement and then neglect catwalk. So you want to try a lot of B splits, and once, you know, if the other team adapts to it, that's going to open up other weaknesses. So really also keep in mind, you know, I've gone over a lot of you know, great points that are going to mess with the other team and how they play, but if they do adapt, you also have to adapt, because every weakness that they cover up opens up another weakness. So you have to be able to find that and sort of understand that as well. So if you do a lot of B splits and they go over, you know, adapt. So that'll be the CT side. The T side is just overall general conclusion. You know, your different smokes. You know, you have in flashes, you have a lot of opportunity with the skyboxes being open to use a lot of, you know, fancy smokes, flashes, and all that. Definitely want to keep that in mind. Um, Also remember, you know, the site is the map overall. You have one weak site, which is a B bomb site, and then you have one strong bomb site, which is a bomb site. But you want to be able to utilize both. So all the ideas I went over on T side, you want to open the map up for yourself, because if you get a one-track pony here going over to one bomb site the whole time, you're gonna have trouble. Okay, so that's another general thing. And the last idea is going to be to simply take control of middle and use that middle control. Um, so that's going to be about it. A lot of stuff for you guys today on Strike. I hope it helped. Once again, if you have any ideas, I've gone over a lot, but I don't know the half of it. So if you guys have your ideas, definitely post them up. You know, help everybody out. Any questions, you know, post them in the comments. Anything else that you'd like to see as well, and just anything you really want to say. Definitely stay active and post a lot. We love to see it. We love to hear from you. So so that's all for me. That's D Strike, and that's D Strike completed for you guys. So that's it for this week, and that's it for me. So I'll see you guys later. For OneSource.com, signing off.